Thank you, and also thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here. I will do three things. I will first of all talk a bit about the Danish presidency priorities, how sustainability fits into it, and then finish off with some of the barriers that we see that needs to be tackled. It's not a secret that we are not taking on the presidency role at a time where it's business as usual. It's quite different. The EU's relative weight is shrinking globally. We see war on European soil. We see our competitiveness is being challenged. And we see transatlantic relations that could also have been better. Our overall slogan is a secure Europe in a changing world. And under that, we have two priorities. The first one is a secure Europe, and the second one is a competitive and green Europe. And that means that during our presidency, we are aiming to make sure that the EU can stand in its own right geopolitically. And at the same time, it's also about showing that the EU can combine competitiveness and the green transition. But we need to recognize that the transition to sustainability is not a natural law. If it was, we would already be there. And at the same time, we need to recognize that sustainability also needs to contribute to competitiveness and sustainability. So where does that fit into our priorities? Sustainability in general, but I will take the example of circular economy. I think the first thing here is to recognize that even Draghi recognizes that circular economy is an important part of achieving the European objectives. 40% of the materials that we import are critical raw materials, and if you can start to recycle that within the Europe, we are quite far. We would reduce our dependency on third countries, and by that we will also improve our strategic autonomy. But even better, if we become more sustainable, we will also be more self-sufficient, and that's going to contribute to our competitiveness, because that means we do have supply chain certainty for our companies. And I think that's particularly important when we see some countries are restricting the export of critical raw materials to the EU, and others like to put tariffs on our products. At the same time, we also see that energy prices in Europe is much higher than elsewhere in the world. So if we start to reduce and recycle much more, we would also see that we need less energy, and again, we improve competitiveness. And then, of course, the good thing about sustainability is it also supports our objectives on environment and climate. Between 20 and 25% of greenhouse gas emissions could be achieved alone by transitioning to a circular economy. And it was already said earlier, but I also wanted to now do a bit of advertisement for the European Environment Agency's report, Europe's Environment 2025, which was launched this week, which also kind of sets out the need for a good environment in order to achieve all the different objectives and the fact that Europe is actually dependent on our nature and environment. So with that, I would like to focus on 3 points that I think is crucial if we are to become more sustainable. The first one is harmonization. We do see that the fragmentation, for example, on the internal market amounts to 45% of tariffs for products and 100% for services. So here there's really something to do. We see not one market, but we see 27 markets. And if we are to talk about simplification, I think real simplification is also to make sure that we go from 27 different kinds of rules to one harmonized set of rules with harmonized standards. And one example of this is the implementation of extended producer responsibility schemes. The practice now is that because we have implemented it in so many different ways, the companies have no incentives to create better products, essentially. It's easier for them to just declare, well, we have bad performing products, even if they're quite good. And in this regard, I also wanted to take the opportunity to sort of throw member states under the bus, because we do bear a bit of the responsibility for this, let's put it like that. So what happens when we negotiate is usually we start off with every member state supporting harmonization full on. Full harmonization would be great. As we move on, every member state start to have a little bit of their own wishes. They would like a bit of flexibility in order to understand the different, or in order to support the proposal. And that means that in the end, we have a law that is, let's put it at least fragmented, or at least it gives the opportunity to implement them in very different ways. That's also how we see some regulations now are starting to look like directives. And the reason for this is that member states are very cost sensitive. So when we take our positions, the first thing we look at is how much does it cost for the member state. And in the moment that we need to change our current systems, we know it's going to cost money. And that means we inherently prefer to just do as we do today, because it's much cheaper. Another issue, and that's related to another point later on, is when we look at what is this going to cost for companies, we will look at what does it cost for the companies within our countries. And yes, they do have to change the system, and they do have to change the system in 27 different member states potentially. But in a few years' time, that would be quite a good investment, because then there will only be one set of rules. But all we see is a cost. So this is just to make clear to you that maybe also here there is, we need some help for you to sort of get across to member states that there is, it's good business to just have one set of standards. And the second point I would like to mention is the need for investments and predictability. We need a clear political sign from the EU, and I think it was already said earlier today, but in the past few weeks I'm surprised about how many companies that has been out saying we need certainty. It's fine with all the omnibuses, it's fine with all the stop the clocks, but it also means we don't know when to invest and we don't know what to invest in. And this is really one of the key challenges right now, that we need to make sure that there is certainty for companies, and we need to make sure that those companies who did investments in becoming sustainable are not going to be punished by those who were kind of happy to wait and were okay with maybe not fulfilling the rules from day one. And the last point I would make is the need for a leveled playing field. Again, it means more enforcement. I can only say from a member state perspective, it's very easy to calculate what's the cost of enforcement, because we just need to look at how many more do we have to hire, and you times that, and you have an idea about what's that going to cost. But it's very difficult for us to calculate what's the cost of non-enforcement, what's the cost of unfair competition. So what we do need is also for you to tell us what is the cost of unfair competition, what is the cost when we allow imports of products from third countries who might not quite fulfill the rules, whether it's on environment issues or due diligence. So that leads me to what are the actions needed. I think the first step is that we need to recognize sustainability is not just for the environment, it is for competitiveness, and it is also for our geopolitical objectives, and that means it's not going to be free of charge. There is a need for investments. That's okay. I mean, right now we are investing a lot in our strategic autonomy. Again, here sustainability fits perfectly into it. The next thing is making sure that we have harmonized rules, harmonized standards. This is going to be a challenge, but we will see, hopefully with the bioeconomy strategy, with the Circular Economy Act and some of the other files coming, they will actually get one step in the right direction. And then finally, of course, a level playing field, which I'm hoping that we will see more of in the coming 5 years. Thank you.